Hey, it's Steve. I'm here on this Ozark Mountain doing some musing. So, spontaneously, I thought I would just do another Musing from the Mountain YouTube video. This one, we'll be talking about my diagnosis. Why am I not out in the world of work? It's because I have been disabled since I was 55, basically. Always led an incredible active lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle. God, I was born in the 60s and raised in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and didn't even experiment with anything. Pretty much a vanilla, plain Jane, straight arrow existence. Not very cool back in the day, but perhaps I'm enjoying the benefits now, later in years, of not abusing my body when I was younger. But you would think someone, I've been teased by people that know me pretty well, who are perhaps they still have habits and have been involved in risky behaviors of one kind or another, and they'll joke with me and say, "You might as well have done that stuff, Steve. Look at me. You know, I'm still working, and here you are disabled." Oh, well, that's just the way it works. That's the way the cookie crumbles. You know, one question I get, because my disabling illness is multiple sclerosis. It's a result of having a demyelination disease. The myelin is the coating of the brain and the spinal cord, simplistically speaking, and it's a type of autoimmune disorders where the body actually attacks the covering over the brain and spinal cord, and then of course the body heals itself, and when it's healed, you have a scar or a sclerotic lesion, and multiple meaning many, sclerosis meaning scars. They should have just called it many scars, but no, they have to come up with a fancy word, and that word is multiple sclerosis, and that's what I have. More of a symptom really related to the demyelination disease, but it comes with an array of other symptoms and disorders, which I'm going to talk about in this video. Why? Well, it's because a question that I get quite often is, how did you know you had it? Because maybe they're having symptoms and they don't want to have MS, but they're wondering if maybe they have MS. So I'm going to just try and be relatively to the point and talk about at least my personal experience, how I ended up getting diagnosed with MS shortly before my 56th birthday. So I will share with you that I was having some health problems. I'd actually transitioned from I'd left critical care and emergency nursing and went toward more of a public health and community health and home health kind of focus, and because I just couldn't do the 12-hour shifts anymore. I just thought it was aging. I was in my late 40s, early 50s, and then I went to behavioral health, mental health nursing, because it was something that interested me, and several people thought that I might be good at it because I seemed to focus on those kinds of things with other people. Which they meant it as a compliment. I took it as a compliment. So anyway, I ended up in the mental health field and was actually in school toward being an advanced practice nurse, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, when I became disabled. So that was my second attempt to be an advanced practice nurse, and I guess that was not meant to be for me. First time was in my 30s. I was going to be a family nurse practitioner. Ended up a single dad of my 3 oldest children. It just wasn't meant to be, and that's fine. It doesn't, I'm still alive. Hey man, a lot of people I knew and grew up with, they're not around anymore, so I'm happy to be alive, even though, well, we're just living the life of a little disabled man now instead of a professional out in the world of work. When I was 55, and I'm 63 now as I make this video, I'm going to be 64 in January, as I make this video here from the mountain, I'm thinking back as to when I was 55 and my body just fell apart. I had swelling of my feet, literally, and my knees, and balance problems, and energy problems, and vision problems, and shoot, they just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I had been assaulted in the workplace, and I wasn't injured badly, but I wasn't healing as I should. They even said, "Man, you should be moving right along." One of the physicians that I saw as part of the workman's comp process said, "You should be, what's going on with you?" Kind of alluded that maybe I was faking it, trying to milk the workman's comp system. Let me tell you what, in Missouri, there's not much money to be made in a workman's comp situation, unlike other states. But that's a subject perhaps for another video. In my case, I could see there was a health problem, and I didn't understand it. I went to my family practice doctor as we were trying to figure out why I was not getting better quicker, why my body seemed to be falling apart. And I said to him, I said, you know, I'm not a doctor, but these symptoms that I'm having sure remind me a lot of what I remember studying about multiple sclerosis back in nursing school. Now, with a background primarily in emergency and ICU, you aren't dealing with the nuts and bolts of people that have MS. That's, you know, it's more cardiac, stroke, and, you know, maybe trauma. Those were my specialties. That's where my expertise lied. And so I really presented this to my family practice guy as, you know, could this be a possibility? He rolled his eyes. He's a nice guy. He wouldn't roll his eyes because he was annoyed necessarily with me. But he did say this. He said, Steve, he looks to the sky and sighs, and he says, everybody thinks they have MS. They think they've got MS. They're dizzy. They think they've got MS. You're 55 years old. You should know this, that people typically get diagnosed in their 20s and 30s with MS, and 70% of them are female. You're 55 and you're not female, buddy, you don't have MS. Well, I like that reassurance. But as time went on and they ruled out so many other things, simple things such as gout, ruled out some other autoimmune illnesses, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, blah, blah, blah. It was going to end up with a referral to a neurologist. Well, the neurologist wouldn't even see me until I'd had MRIs done of my, well, basically brain and spinal cord. And the family practice doctor told me that, and I said, well, we've already had MRIs done. Well, there's a special way to do these MRIs. It's called we order the MRI with MS detail. Well, all those years in healthcare, I had never heard of a special way to order an MRI. I just didn't know. It's ignorance on my part. I never had a need to know. And so we did the MRI with MS detail, and guess what? Oh, Steve was right. The reason that it seemed like I was feeling a lot like I'd studied about MS is because, God, I had MS. And the doctor was wrong. I am the strange one in that here I was a few days before my 56th birthday, and I had MS, a diagnosis of MS. Well, this could really turn into a long thing, and I won't tell you about all the drama in my life and employment and the disabling, you know, getting the disability, and I won't get into that in this video. But I am going to go back to what my symptoms were, because people ask me that all the time. You know, what did you feel? What made you believe that you had MS? Currently, the symptoms that I deal with, the most marked symptoms that I deal with, the big one is short-term memory loss. Big time, big time, big time. And my memory, if you know me very well, I've had a pretty good memory in my lifetime. You know, typical old person, you can remember what happened years ago, you can't remember what you ate for breakfast, kind of thing. And when I forget stuff, I just laugh it off and say, you know, I got 6 kids. I do good to remember their names and their birthdays. I'm doing pretty good. I've had a few wives. I do good to remember their names. So for a guy with short-term memory loss, I do pretty good in the memory department. But that was the worst of all the testing I had done. That was the worst. The other thing is that I will share. I deal with Uthoff's syndrome, or Uthoff's phenomenon. It's an ailment that's associated with, I don't know if other people with neurological illnesses have it or not, but basically you're hypersensitive to changes in body temperature. In the videos that I do on Facebook, and you'll see them in my YouTube videos as well, I've always got a glass and I'm always sipping from it. Typically people might be sipping from a drink to keep their lips and tongue wet so they can talk. In my case, I am maybe, but most of it is because I'm starting to be symptomatic. I'm feeling that perhaps I'm getting a little hot. If it's chilly outside, I'll be drinking maybe some hot tea. I'm constantly drinking either a cold or a hot beverage to stabilize my body temperature, because that Uthoff's phenomenon means that you have symptoms if you deviate. Even some literature says a half of a body temperature, half of a degree. So I have to micromanage my body temperature. If I'm not able to do that, I get dizzy. I get double vision. I have marked memory problems, and I stutter. You know, I do a lot of these videos historically on Facebook. I'm starting this YouTube channel, Musings from the Mountain. By the way, please like and subscribe if you happen to be watching this on my YouTube channel. More of a vanity thing. I'm not trying to make any money at it, but I would appreciate that if you could like and subscribe. It makes me feel better. But you'll see me drinking a lot. I'm micromanaging my body temperature when I do that. If I don't, for instance, in the mornings, going on to another symptom, in the morning I can barely put a sentence together that's coherent. You'd never know that by listening to me talk in these videos. But it's actually so bad, I don't even take phone calls in the morning. I don't set up appointments. I don't do any business. I mean, if I'm taking care of business at 10:30 and 11, it's really taxing for me. It's weird. It's just the fact. It's about 1 or 1:30 or so before I can be functional and walk among the living kind of thing. So there's another symptom. So we've got, sensitive to body temperature, the symptoms that come along with that, the weakness and the unsteady gait, especially in the mornings. I can't walk a straight line. I'm more prone to get dizzy or have experienced vertigo. I had a Volkswagen Trike, and I'm just convinced it had a starter problem. So I'm on my back, and I'm underneath there with my tools. This is before we moved to Branson, and where I had my shop and stuff. And I'm taking the starter off. Man, I had such a horrible case of vertigo, and I thought, I am just worthless. I can't even lie on my back on my creeper and take a starter off, something as simple as this Volkswagen Trike, without getting sick and nauseated. So there's another symptom. As I look back on things, even though I did not get diagnosed, and none of the doctors knew, unless I didn't know officially, that I had MS until I was older, as I look back on things, I've had symptoms my whole life, which won't surprise anyone, because I guess I shared earlier that most people get their diagnosis in their 20s and 30s. I've had temperature sensitivity and fatigue problems even in my 20s. I remember going out, hay season, even after I moved to St. Louis and I was working for McDonnell Douglas Automation Company Health Services Division. I would go back to Northeast Missouri to the farm where I grew up, and I'd help Dad during hay season. The last year we did that, I think, was 82 or 83. I was 22 or 23 years old. And then he got a big baler, or hired the big baling out, I guess, initially. And we didn't do the small bales, hay bales that you had to pick up. And I remember, I'd been to the bodybuilders gym in St. Louis, or in St. Charles, and I was working out. I was going to be a Mr. T. Mr. T was my idol, stand on the parking lot, tell where people were to park kind of thing. Never got there, obviously. I wasn't smart enough back then to know those folks that looked like that took steroids, and I certainly would never have done that. But, just, supplements like vitamins and iron pills and, workout, hydration. And, I got healthy, but never had those kinds of muscles. You just don't get those kinds of muscles unless you take steroids. But even back then, I was working out, and I go out to the hayfield, and I'm picking up these. They're heavy enough, especially depending on, what type of grass it was. It was grass, or what type of plant it was we were baling in that part of the field. Some of them bales were pretty heavy. And my dad was in his mid-50s. He just worked circles around me. Here I am going to bodybuilders. I'm 22, 23 years old. I'm in the prime of my life. I'm taking supplements. Dad just worked circles around me. I remember going over to the well on the farm by the barn, because we brought the hay in and we stacked the barn full. And that way, Dad had hay to feed the cattle in the wintertime. And I remember going over to the well and cranking the well and putting my head underneath it, and a wet towel trying to cool my body down. And my dad would just roll his eyes. He'd just keep working. He was up in the dead burn attic of the barn, the loft of the barn where it was incredibly hot. I was just down there throwing hay on the elevator, taking the hay bales up. Yes, by that time we had an elevator. Before that, we were throwing them up there. So I realize now that I had a temperature sensitivity. These Udhoff's thing is something I've had to deal with my whole life. I never quite had the stamina or strength that I should have had for someone that put so much into life like I did in terms of working out in a healthy lifestyle. I attribute that all to the disease process, which ultimately that I got the diagnosis of MS over. I had a friend in St. Louis, St. Charles, a wife of a friend of mine. She was a friend too. She was diagnosed with Rosalie. She was diagnosed with MS, and I called her on the phone in the late 80s, and I asked her the same question that I hear. God, how did you feel? How did you know? Da-da-da. And she says, well, for me, I was driving home one day, and I lost my peripheral vision. It just went black. I said, it just went black? Did you crash your car? She says, no, I can still see straight ahead. I just lost my peripheral vision. I wasn't on the clinical side of healthcare at the time. I didn't understand the pathophysiology of what caused that. I know now she had lesions on her optic nerve. But then it came back, and then it would come the blindness. She'd lose it only on one side, not the other, and she had these lesions on her optic nerve. I know now. I've never had vision problems like that. Matter of fact, I'm 60. I don't know, am I 63? Going to be 64, and assuming that I'm feeling good, I went and had my eyes checked late last year. I still got 20/20 vision. I don't even need glasses. That's amazing. But let me have a bad day with my MS. It feels like this eye is way out here, the right eye is way out here, and the left eye is sunken in. It's kind of like putting glasses on that aren't yours. A strong prescription, how you can't even see through them. How do you see through these things? That's the sensation I have at intervals. So yeah, the temperature sensitivity, the lack of stamina and strength, visual problems, when I am symptomatic. Another common symptom of people with MS that I did experience about the time I was diagnosed, and that is, they call it the MS hug, where you feel like something is like a band around your chest, and it just hugs you and holds you tight for a while, and then it relaxes. Kind of a weird feeling, kind of a scary feeling when it's happened. It's happened to me 2 or 3 times, and I'm very glad to report I've not experienced it in a few years now. So, yes, it does affect your gait, your ability to walk a straight line. There was a time that I wasn't doing as good as I am now, but I haven't used a walker or a cane in years. I'm just doing wonderful. However, the temperature sensitivity, the most marked symptom I have, I can't remember if I mentioned it or not, is short-term memory. That is ongoing, never goes away. And those are the symptoms that I experience, and that I experienced and that I still experience. There's some other little ones that I won't get into here. Very common among people with this illness as it progresses, or bowel and bladder problems, maybe episodes of incontinence or urgency or lack of control or blah blah blah. There's that. There are other neurological deficits that people can have, and this disease looks different on everybody. There's a girl I went to high school with, went to nursing school with twice. We became nurses at the community college level, went on and finished our bachelor's at the same time. She continued to work her whole life. She got diagnosed back in her 20s. I remember, I won't mention her by name for her own privacy, but I remember she was hospitalized while we were in nursing school, and I remember going to see her. Our families are connected, by the way. I don't know that we, without doing DNA testing, both of us, if we have genetic material that we share, but our families intermarried. So I called her a cousin. But I went to see her in the hospital, and a lot of our fellow nursing students went to see her as well. And while she was there, she got her diagnosis of MS. I'm making a video. Shh. I'm an old guy, but I got an 8-year-old. Anyway, she got her diagnosis even before finishing nursing school. She had a full career, working in healthcare, in the healthcare field. I was able to retire, and she was able to work and keep all her symptoms at bay, and good for her. Other people are not. Other people are totally disabled before they ever hit 30. So it looks different on everybody. By the way, I also in the 80s was hospitalized. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. But maybe because I was a man, I don't know. They never tested for MS. I had a different doctor, I'm sure, than my friend. I guess they didn't suspect it in me, and they missed it in me. So I think my diagnosis ultimately was meningitis, aseptic meningitis. So it's kind of weird how that happens. So the focus here in the video, I tend to ramble. People ask me, what symptoms did you have? How do you know that that you had MS? Well, I didn't, and the doctors highly doubted I had it because I was a man in my middle 50s. I remember I was working in the inpatient mental health unit, and a fellow nurse, he's one of my Facebook friends, he may even read this, I had my legs crossed, like you have your legs crossed like that. And I remember reaching down and taking my leg with my hand and putting it down on the ground. It was just something I had to do because my legs would get numb and I'd lose the ability to move them. He says, "Why are you doing that?" He noticed, when you're a nurse, you notice things like that with other people. I said, "I don't know. I just do." He says, "You need to look into that. That's not right. You shouldn't have to lift your leg up off the other." Well, I know now that's also, the strength issue and the little things like that, little subtle things that were missed in every medical exam I had, I guess, my entire life. But on the positive side, I never had, for my deficits, I was always more, self-depreciating. I just minimized my ability, well, I don't guess I'll ever be strong. Don't guess I'll ever have endurance. Yeah, I can't handle the hot temperatures. I don't know why. I had friends that would kind of tease me and make fun of me. I couldn't help it. I just assumed I'm a weaker human being, I realize now I no doubt had a medical reason for it. So I hope this has been informative. It's 22 minutes long. I could talk a lot more about my experience with this illness, but the focus was, what symptoms did you have that led up to you ultimately getting this diagnosis. One more quick story. It's New Year's Eve day, and I have traveled, at this point we're on the farm up in northeast Missouri, and I traveled back to the hospital where I worked out there in Kansas City, and I had this MRI with MS detail. Typically, you have a radiological procedure done. It takes the radiologist has to look at it, and they dictate the results. And back in the day, the transcriptionist then would transcribe it, and they'd send it over to you. Several days later, your ordering physician, the family practice guy, would get it, review it, send it over to neurology, and they call you. You get your results 5 to 8 days later. This was over the holiday period, so that's not an unreasonable time period. I'm in Kansas City. I'd stopped at the Cracker Barrel in Liberty, Missouri, and I ate, and then I was going to drive all the rest of the way to Macon, to the farm where we were living at the time. And I had car trouble. It's New Year's Eve day, and the bad weather's coming in. Oh, this is great. My truck I was driving was only 2-wheel drive. Oh, this is great. So I called AAA. I'm a premier member of AAA, which means you get one long-haul tow a year. And I took advantage of that. And the AAA flatbed truck came, and, he's going to haul me all the way to Macon County. And he did. So I'm in this tow truck. Had my MRI done. I'd eaten my supper at Cracker Barrel. I'm in the tow truck, visiting with the tow truck driver. Telling him how my granddad had a garage and a tow service back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and early 70s kind of thing. Just making small talk, talking about cars or whatever. And my cell phone rings. And it was my hospital. So I answered it, and a voice that I didn't know said, "Hi, my name is Dr. whatever his name was. Who knows what his name was? He was a radiologist." He says, "I work in the radiology department. I've had a chance to review your images from your MRI, and typically I don't call patients when I see results, but I see you're a nurse. I see you work here. You're part of the Truman family kind of thing. And, you know, it's New Year's Eve day, and it may be days before you know otherwise. And I thought, as a professional courtesy, I would call you directly. And, uh, and I was used to that. I would talk to physicians routinely, including radiologists, to get results, especially in the ER, where time is of the essence. But he says, Mr. Alexander, he says, Steve, I said, I'm sorry to tell you, you've got multiple sclerosis. I mean, it's just so obvious. Now that we've done the MRI with MS detail, it's so obvious. And I wanted you to know this so that you go ahead and make plans accordingly. So that's my story as to how I'm in the tow truck. Truck's broke down on the back of the flatbed. You know, the tow truck's driving me all the way from basically the Kansas City area all the way to northeast Missouri, and I get my diagnosis of MS. And I thought, wow, I was not expecting that. And after all, my family practice doctor rolled his eyes and says, everyone thinks they have MS. You don't have MS. Guess what? Old Steve had multiple sclerosis. He had demyelination disease and Udhoff syndrome and all these other things I realize I have now related to my illness. So that's my story, my symptoms, how I got the information. I never went back to work again, unfortunately. I keep thinking I might be able to somehow do something functional and productive in life. But the stamina issue, and I never know if my vision's going to be affected, you know. I'd love to use some of this expertise that I have in healthcare to give something back, especially during COVID. I really wanted to, but I wouldn't be good for any more than a 4-hour shift. Hospitals don't want to hire you for 4 hours, you know, we're at least 8 to 12 or more, you know. So, you know, I'm just disabled. I've got this illness, but I'm feeling great. I deal with the symptoms as they come. And I hope you found this informative, and have a great day. Thanks for listening. Be sure and like and subscribe if you're watching this on my YouTube channel.